And I call on Jim Fairlie to wind up. Up to 6 minutes, Minister.
Presiding Officer, as I close, I would like to thank again the members of the Rural Affairs Committee and Parliament, and particularly the committee clerks and those who have spoken today, and for all of those organisations who have contributed to the debate. Presiding Officer, at the inception of this Parliament, it was hailed as the People's Parliament, and the level of engagement and participation through this and many other bills demonstrates how much better legislation is when government and the people engage to get it right. So I want to thank everyone who has done so to get us here today. And I aim much of my closing remarks to those listening right now. Finally, and this is probably my most important thank you, because the only way that this very new Minister was able to manage a Stage 2 with 23 groupings and over 200 amendments, and now a Stage 3 with 15 groupings and over 100 amendments, is because of the absolutely brilliant team supported by outstanding policy and legal officials who have helped me every step of the way in navigating the complexity of making complex law. They do all the heavy lifting, and I'm not sure many of us in this chamber really realise just how hard Scotland's civil servants work in the service of Scotland. So I give my thanks to them for their expertise, for their diligence, but most of all for their patience. Presiding Officer, as someone whose entire adult life has until very recently been bound by the rhythms of nature, the ebb and flow of seasons, the understanding of new life, and of course the acceptance of death that is the reality of our natural environment, then it's perhaps fitting that this has been my first bill as a Minister. And it is vital part of the Scottish Government's wider programme of work to protect and restore our wildlife, biodiversity and natural environment. It builds on the strong foundations of the Animals and Wildlife Penalties, Protections and Powers of Scotland Act, the 2020 Hunting with Dogs and the 2023 Hunting of Dogs Act that we passed in Chamber last year. Presiding Officer, as a young man, I remember being brought up in a council housing estate in Perth to over 30 years of working on the land. I have always had a love and a passion for our countryside and the wildlife that we share with it. I have lived through some great highs and very real lows in my farming career, and I'd briefly like to touch on that point and make a comparison to those folk who we rely on now to manage our landscapes. Today, most folk in our country, and most certainly in this government, absolutely get that farmers play a vital role in our society and in serving the nation, by providing the raw product to feed us and to generate income that we spend more widely, by enhancing our environment and working with nature. A new agri-reform bill will do even more to strengthen that symbiotic relationship, the respect we have for each other, and to cement that absolutely vital relationship. But it's not that long ago where it was farmers who were seen as the villains. With the BSC, Frankenstein foods and foot and mouth, all these things had the industry on the rack and feeling as though they were public enemy number one. As a young shepherd with a very young family in a tied house, I am well aware of the anxiety that uncertainty can bring. During this bill, we have been reminded of that uncertainty that hangs over a group of rural workers in regards to housing, which the Housing Minister has agreed to meet with me to discuss, but I will revisit that at a later date. But by engagement with the public, by looking at the positive stories, by reminding folk of the good work farmers do, the narrative started to change and attitudes changed with it. We now have a healthy relationship between farmers and consumers, which is to be celebrated and continued. That, Presiding Officer, is the opportunity which the passing of this bill affords the rural practitioners on grouse moors and in game businesses. It's a demonstration that this industry is regulated and adhered to by hard-working, responsible people who love the natural environment as much, and if not more so, than we all do. And that should be celebrated. If the BBC can make blockbuster viewing figures from the heroes in This Farming Life, then why not the environmental heroes in This Moorland Life? They could do worse than starting off with the aforementioned D Ward and the Rottle Estate, who I've already stated is doing amazing work. When taking this bill forward, the Government and all the ministers who have helped its passage were clear that balance was the key to making this legislation work for all. Our aim was clear. The tiny number of bad apples should be weeded out. We will be far more considered in our burnings. We will have the highest standards of animal welfare that demonstrates this industry will do its job better than anyone could have imagined was possible. And it will gain the respect that it so richly deserves by being the custodians of the landscapes and of the standards that society expects and wants. So, Presiding Officer, I would urge the industry to grab this opportunity and make it their quest to be recognised not just in Scotland but across the world as the beating heart of an environment we can all be proud of for generations to come. Presiding Officer, for the benefit of our environment, for our wildlife and for our rural communities, I urge all members to pass the Wildlife Management and Muirburn Scotland Bill today. Thank you.
Thank you.